As I dragged my beat-up suitcase across the cracked driveway of my late parents' old bungalow in Willow Creek, HOA, the afternoon sun glared down like it was in on the joke. My hand shook, not just from the weight of 6 months of rock-bottom unemployment, but from the pure rage and fear bubbling under my skin. Barbara Wilkins, our beloved HOA president, stood on her perfectly manicured lawn 2 houses over, arms folded, that fake sweet smile plastered across her face like she'd already won. She knew exactly what waited for me here. Another round of citations, another pile of fines for grass that was supposedly 1 inch too long, another lecture about how I was disrupting community harmony. But seconds later, old Mrs. Evelyn Harper from next door shuffled out in her housecoat, pressed a folded note into my palm, and whispered the words that flipped my entire revenge script. If I hadn't lived through every humiliating second myself, you'd swear this was pure fiction. Trust me, stick around till the bitter end. Because sometimes the people who swear they're protecting the neighborhood are the exact ones you need protection from. My name is Sophia Reynolds, and 6 months ago, I never dreamed I'd be crawling back to this suffocating cul-de-sac I escaped at 22. At 28, I should have been closing big design contracts in Chicago, sipping overpriced lattes with colleagues who actually valued my work. Instead, I was broke, jobless, and staring down the barrel of HOA hell. "Welcome back, Sophia," Barbara called across the street, her voice dripping honeyed venom. "We've missed your creative interpretations of the covenants." Her mouth curved into that signature smirk, the one that had haunted every community meeting since I was a teenager. The one that said she knew something I didn't. I froze mid-step, knuckles white on the suitcase handle. The weight of 6 months of being treated like the neighborhood charity case crushed my shoulders. 6 months of biting my tongue while Barbara and her loyal board cronies painted me as the entitled city girl who couldn't follow simple rules. The air smelled like fresh-cut grass and Barbara's signature gardenia perfume, both equally nauseating. My elderly neighbor, Mr. Patel, pretended to water his roses while clearly eavesdropping. He'd perfected the art of selective blindness whenever Barbara decided to issue another violation. Mrs. Harper lounged against her porch rail, examining her chipped nail polish with theatrical boredom. "She's making a scene again," she muttered loud enough for the whole block to hear. Just like when she was little, always needing the spotlight. My jaw tightened. The irony burned. They were the ones turning my quiet return into a block party spectacle. All I'd done was unload one suitcase and try to slip inside without fanfare. "Let her settle in," Barbara continued, finally stepping onto the sidewalk so everyone could see her power pose. "She'll learn soon enough that Willow Creek doesn't coddle rule breakers who cry foul every time a citation shows up." The phrase landed like a slap, cry foul, as if every legitimate complaint I'd ever filed about flooding basements, broken streetlights, or Barbara's illegal backyard shed had been pure theater. As if the black mold that nearly hospitalized me at 16 had been an excuse to dodge lawn mowing duty. As if the migraines that left me bedridden after every all-night HOA emergency meeting were attention-seeking stunts. I took another step toward my door, the old concrete groaning under my sneakers. Or maybe it was groaning at me too. Everything in this neighborhood seemed to side with Barbara. Then I heard it, the soft scrape of orthopedic shoes on pavement. "Sophia, dear." Mrs. Evelyn Harper stood at my mailbox, silver hair in its perfect bun, eyes sharp as ever at 83. She was the only soul who'd ever quietly believed me. Though powerless against the board, Barbara had made sure of that, limiting her speaking time at meetings, screening her suggestions. She pressed the folded paper into my hand. "Your mother," she whispered, voice barely carrying over the cicadas, "would have torn down every one of those ridiculous signs before letting them treat you this way." Her fingers lingered. "Sometimes, sweetheart, the best revenge isn't packing up and leaving. It's making sure they never forget why you had to." Barbara sighed, theatrically from her lawn. "Evelyn, don't fill the poor girl's head with more nonsense." "But Mrs. Harper just smiled, a smile I'd never seen before. Sharp, calculating, almost predatory. "Oh, Barbara, you have no idea what nonsense looks like, but you will." She squeezed my hand once more and shuffled away, leaving me standing there with the paper burning a hole in my palm and a brand new feeling blooming in my chest. It wasn't rage anymore. It wasn't even desperation. It was cold, crystal clear possibility. Barbara had already dismissed me, turning back to her prize-winning roses with a satisfied grunt. "Mrs. Harper disappeared inside. Mr. Patel went back to his roses. They all thought this chapter was closed. They thought I was beaten. I adjusted my grip on the suitcase and stepped inside my dusty bungalow. But something had shifted. The trembling stopped. My steps steadied. I wasn't running back to this hellhole anymore. I was walking in with a plan. The note in my pocket felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds as I sat on the sagging couch that still smelled like my parents'. Before unfolding it, I let my mind drift back to where the nightmare truly began. Back to the day I learned that in Willow Creek, your pain would always be questioned, your truth always doubted. I was 9 when the first real violation hit. I'd fallen off my bike on the community path. HOA-mandated helmets required, of course, and landed hard on my wrist. The school nurse sent me home with an x-ray recommendation. Barbara, already on the board even back then, took one look at my swollen arm and declared it barely a sprain. "Stop being so dramatic, Sophia," she'd said, wrapping in a cheap ace bandage right there on her porch while neighbors watched. "You just want to skip tomorrow's mandatory welcome wagon bake sale." I couldn't hold a pencil for days. Tears streamed down my face while I tried to finish homework left-handed. When my teacher finally called, Barbara reluctantly drove me to urgent care, only after the principal threatened to involve child services. The x-ray showed a clean fracture. "Kids heal fast," was all she said when the doctor chewed her out for waiting 3 days. She wasn't complaining that much, but I had begged. I had cried. I just learned my voice didn't matter inside these perfect white picket fences. The pattern locked in fast. At 11, I woke with stabbing stomach pain. Barbara made me attend the HOA pool cleaning volunteer day anyway. "Everyone gets tummy aches," she snapped. 8 hours later, I was in surgery, appendix on the verge of bursting. At 13, what I now know were panic attacks were written off as teenage theatrics during the annual 4th of July HOA parade. At 15, chronic migraines became excuses to avoid curb appeal inspections. By 16, when I fainted during a neighborhood barbecue, while the smell of grilling burgers made my vision swim from low blood sugar and an undiagnosed eating disorder born of constant scrutiny, Barbara told concerned neighbors I was going through a rebellious phase. She'd moved her sister-in-law onto the board by then, and together they crafted the legend, Sophia the drama queen. Sophia the attention seeker. Sophia the girl who cried violation. Your mother was exactly the same, Barbara would sigh, which was the cruelest lie of all. Mom had fought her own battles with quiet strength, never exaggerating, never minimizing. But I was too young to defend her memory, and Dad was too busy working double shifts to notice. The gaslighting was surgical. By 17, I'd stopped trusting my own body. Felt pain? Was it real? Bad enough? Or was I just being dramatic again? I'd wait until things were unbearable before speaking up, and even then I'd apologize for the inconvenience. College saved me. My freshman roommate found me curled on the dorm floor one night, sobbing from cramps so vicious I couldn't stand. "Why didn't you say something?" she asked, already grabbing keys. "It's probably nothing," I whispered. "I don't want to be dramatic." She looked at me like I had 2 heads. "Dramatic? That's not dramatic. That's human." The ER diagnosed endometriosis I'd suffered in silence for years. That night, I started keeping records, dated journals, medical files, photos of every injury, every fine, every dismissal. Not for revenge. Just to remind myself I wasn't crazy. Now, sitting in my parents' old living room with Mrs. Evelyn's note still folded tight, I realized those records had a new purpose. The girl who'd been trained to doubt herself had become a woman who knew exactly what had been done to her, and she was ready to make the entire Willow Creek HOA remember. Finally, I unfolded the note. Mrs. Evelyn's shaky but determined handwriting read, "The truth needs witnesses. Annual block party. I'll make sure the whole board is there. 3 days away." I tucked it back in my pocket and drove to the cheap motel on the edge of town. Barbara had already slapped a temporary occupancy violation on my mailbox for unapproved long-term guest status, even though the house was mine. As I stared at the water-stained ceiling, my mind replayed how I'd ended up back in this HOA prison in the first place. After college, I'd built something beautiful. My interior design degree landed me at a prestigious Chicago firm. For 6 years, I thrived. Clients requested me. My boss groomed me for partnership. My apartment was small, but mine, every detail intentional. I had friends who knew nothing of Willow Creek. I dated cautiously. I wanted therapy. I was healing. Then the hotel chain contract collapsed. The firm slashed staff. Last in, first out. Me, despite 6 years of loyalty. Savings hemorrhaged. Rent, loans, utilities. I sold restored furniture piece by piece. Let health insurance lapse. By September, I had $800 and no prospects. That's when Dad's old lawyer called. The bungalow was paid off, but the HOA covenants required active residency or risk foreclosure proceedings. Barbara had pushed that clause 3 years ago. Pride was a luxury when homelessness loomed. I packed what remained into my Civic and drove back, telling myself it was temporary. Just rebuild the portfolio, land remote gigs, escape again. Barbara had other plans. From day one, community participation became indentured servitude. She assigned me to organize every potluck, repaint the community hall, maintain the welcome garden, unpaid, of course. Her sister-in-law supervised with sadistic glee, finding fault in everything. Those roses are not regulation height. Your mailbox flag is faded violation. My laptop time was policed. Still playing on the computer? She'd sneer even when I was clearly drafting proposals. She'd interrupt Zoom interviews with emergency inspections. My files mysteriously corrupted on the community Wi-Fi she controlled. Mail with job offers disappeared. When I confronted her at a board meeting, she smiled that same smirk. "You're imagining things, Sophia." Just like always. My only ally was Marcus. Wait, no, my half-brother from Dad's second marriage had moved away years ago. The only bright spot was quiet Mrs. Evelyn, who slipped me $20 bills from her Social Security check. "This is wrong," she'd whisper. "Temporary," I'd lie. 6 months of unemployment looked like failure on any resume, and Barbara made sure every neighbor knew it. "Maybe this is where you belong," she'd said last week while I scrubbed graffiti off the community fence on my hands and knees. The power washer was under repair until I finished. Some people just aren't cut out for big city success. That was the moment I decided to leave, even if it meant living in my car. Anything beat slow suffocation under her rules. But Mrs. Evelyn's note changed everything. The block party. The whole board, every neighbor who'd swallowed Barbara's narrative. Poor Sophia, always causing drama, can't even keep her lawn compliant. 3 days to prepare. 3 days to decide how to make them see who they really were. My phone buzzed. Text from Mrs. Evelyn. "Barbara's already telling everyone you stormed off last week because you refused to contribute to the new flagpole fund." I laughed bitter sharp. Even my quiet return had been rewritten. The block party couldn't come fast enough. The motel became my war room. I spread medical records, timelines, every violation notice I'd kept like receipts from hell. But life, as usual, had other plans. The call came Saturday night. "Mrs. Evelyn," voice tight. "Sophia, the block party got moved to tomorrow. Barbara decided it's more festive on short notice. She's expecting you to cater the entire dessert table. Says it's your volunteer duty or another $500 fine. If you don't show, she's telling everyone you stole from the community fund." The manipulation was so blatant it was almost funny. I went anyway. Not for Barbara. For Mrs. Evelyn. for the plan. Sunday dawned gray and sticky, Missouri heat already choking at 9 a.m. I pulled into the community park to find it packed with cars. Through the pavilion, I saw chaos. Barbara barking orders, neighbors frantically setting up. The second I stepped out, she was on me. Good. You're here. Desserts by noon. Shopping list on the table. Here's the cash, don't skimp. She shoved bills at me without eye contact and walked away. And Sophia? Try not to make today about you. By 11, I was drowning in baking sheets. 30 pounds of cookie dough, fruit trays, the industrial oven blasting. My chest heightened around 10, but I ignored it. Just stress. Just heat. Moving a bit slow, aren't we? Barbara observed from the doorway. Iced tea in hand despite the early hour. Guests arrived soon. The tightness became pressure. My left arm tingled. Sweat poured, but the oven was roaring, right? I kept chopping mechanically. Vision tunneled. I need to sit for a second. I managed. Barbara rolled her eyes. Of course you do. Big surprise. Sophia needs attention on the biggest day of the year. I gripped the counter as dizziness slammed me. Chest pain exploded. The knife clattered. I can't breathe properly, I gasped. Oh, here we go, Barbara called to the pavilion. Sophia is having one of her episodes again. She appeared, irritated. What now? Something's wrong. I wheezed, clutching my chest. The pain radiated like fire. Your chest hurts because you're panicking about actually contributing for once, she said flatly. You've done this before. Remember the 4th of July when you couldn't breathe during setup? Stop the drama and finish the cookies. The room spun. I stumbled, missed the chair, knees smashing the concrete. Pain detonated. Voices rose. She's faking, Barbara insisted. Look, she's perfectly capable, just lazy. But I wasn't faking. I was on the ground, fighting concrete lungs. Lips numb, tingling, turning blue. Dad, look at her lips, a young neighbor kid yelled. She's holding her breath for effect. Barbara snapped. Guests were arriving. I heard cheerful hellos. Barbara's booming laugh explaining the commotion as Sophia being Sophia. I tried to speak. Only a wheeze came out. Vision grayed. Someone shook my shoulder. The kid, terrified. Call 911, he screamed. Don't you dare, Barbara barked. Not in front of everyone. She'll be fine when she realizes nobody's buying it. But the kid already had the phone. My neighbor can't breathe. Lips blue. Barely conscious. Last thing I clearly remember. Sirens growing louder, Barbara's angry voice telling everyone I'd always been like this, always needing the spotlight, and Mrs. Evelyn's face above me, cool hand on my burning forehead. Hold on, sweetheart. This time everyone's watching. This time they'll all see. Paramedics burst through the pavilion like avenging angels. Oxygen mask slapped on my face, voices cutting through Barbara's protests. Ma'am, step back. This is a medical emergency. As they wheeled me past the gathering crowd, neighbors in sundresses, kids with balloons frozen mid-bite, board members clutching clipboards. I caught their faces, horror, shock, and for the first time, doubt cracking the narrative they'd swallowed for years. The drama queen was dying in front of them. Nothing fake about blue lips and an oxygen sat of 78%. The ER was controlled chaos. Machines beeping, nurses shouting numbers. Straight to trauma bay. Pulmonary embolism, multiple clots, right lung shredded. DR. Patel leaned in. Sophia, you have blood clots in your lungs. We're starting treatment now. You're going to be okay, but this was very close. Through the curtain gap, I saw Barbara and her sister-in-law still in party aprons, looking annoyed. The kid who called 911 stood apart, pale. They hit me with blood thinners, TPA, dissolving the clots. Nurse Sharon held my hand. You're lucky, she whispered. Another hour, she didn't finish. One stable, DR. Patel spoke to the family, meaning the board. I heard every word. MS. Wilkins, your resident, nearly died. The clots were extensive. If the young man hadn't called when he did, she has a history of exaggeration, Barbara interrupted smoothly. We didn't think, DR. Patel's voice turned steel. There is no exaggerating a pulmonary embolism. The CT doesn't lie. Her oxygen at 78% doesn't lie. Your resident was dying. Silence. Furthermore, he continued, she reported chest pain and shortness of breath you dismissed. Correct. She always complains about something, Barbara's sister-in-law chimed. Ma'am, dismissing symptoms like these can be fatal. Has she been evaluated for clotting disorders? Family history. Dr. Patel documented everything I could remember, every past incident, every delayed treatment. Nurse Sharon's face darkened. This is medical neglect, she muttered later. Word spread through the hospital. I became the HOA girl whose board almost let her die at a block party. Nurses brought extra blankets, extra jello, their eyes fierce with justice. Mrs. Evelyn visited daily with homemade soup and sharper observations. The whole neighborhood is buzzing, she reported. Barbara is trying to spin it as Sophia's anxiety again, but too many people saw. Even a mailman filmed a clip on his phone. Over 3 days tests revealed the truth. Factor V Leiden, genetic clotting disorder inherited from mom. Combined with birth control pills I'd been on and dehydration from slaving in that hot pavilion under Barbara's orders. Perfect storm. Your mother had this? Dr. Patel asked. They found it during her last checkup. I should have been tested years ago. You pulled up a chair. Sophia, if you'd known, if you'd been on preventives, this could have been avoided. Have you had symptoms before? I thought of every leg ache called laziness, every shortness of breath labeled excuse, every chest pain dismissed as drama. Yes, I said quietly. But I was told they weren't real. He documented meticulously. The hospital room turned command center. I watched the neighborhood fracture through visitors. Barbara visited exactly twice. First time, insurance should cover most. I suppose you'll need somewhere to recover. I told her I'd made arrangements. Mrs. Evelyn's spare room. Second visit, cheap grocery store flowers and damage control. We never meant for this. You've always been expressive. How were we supposed to know this time was different? Even near death, she couldn't admit fault. Flowers hit the trash. Mrs. Evelyn came every afternoon. I've been busy too, she said one day, showing me a video on her phone. Clear footage, me on the concrete. Lips blue, Barbara arms crossed declaring I was faking, the kid calling 911 against orders. Your cousin Beth, the nurse, took it. She's furious. Recognized the signs immediately. Barbara wouldn't let her near you. Who else has this? Everyone who matters. And I've been collecting stories. Other neighbors finally talking about times they saw your pain ignored. Thanksgiving, when you had that kidney infection and still had to serve the potluck. Aunt Patricia has notes. Christmas faint. Barbara said you were pretending. Uncle George has paramedic photos. Why didn't anyone speak up before? Her face softened. Barbara's persuasive. She made us all doubt what we saw. But watching you die in front of 30 witnesses, that changed everything. The week I recovered, the room became Strategy HQ. I compiled hospital records, Dr. Patel's notes, the Factor V diagnosis. Created a massive timeline poster. Every violation, every medical dismissal, every fine issued while I was sick. Mrs. Evelyn brought photocopies of Barbara's own board meeting minutes. Entries where she documented my attention-seeking behavior while accidentally recording real symptoms. Beth the nurse built a PowerPoint showing how each ignored incident could have caught the disorder years earlier. Even Mr. Patel quietly contributed Mom's old medical file from the attic. Factor V Leiden diagnosed during pregnancy with me. Doctor's note recommending I be tested as a teen. You knew, I whispered to Dad when he visited once. He stared at his hands. Barbara said you were fine. She always sounded so sure. Sunday arrived crisp. Mrs. Evelyn's backyard, neutral ground, filled with every board member, every neighbor. Barbara and her sister-in-law arrived last, faces set like they were doing everyone a favor. Thank you for coming, Mrs. Evelyn began, arranging chairs like a courtroom. We need to discuss Sophia's situation and the medical bills. Insurance covers it. Barbara snapped. Nothing to discuss. I stood, voice steady. Actually, there's quite a lot. I walked to the timeline I'd mounted on Mrs. Evelyn's shed wall. Age 9, hairline fracture, untreated 3 days because it was dramatic during bake sale duty. I placed the old X-ray on the picnic table. Age 11, appendicitis nearly ruptured because I was forced to volunteer at pool day. The surgical report joined it. Barbara, this is unnecessary, her sister-in-law started. Age 13, panic attacks called teenage theatrics during parade setup. Age 16, fainting at barbecue while serving food. I faced them all. Every single incident dismissed as attention-seeking to avoid HOA duties. I pulled out the hospital diagnostic report. Factor V Leiden. Genetic. My mother had it. Documented in her records that Barbara had access to when she became executor of Mom's estate after the funeral. Page 47. Doctor's recommendation I be tested as a teen. The backyard went dead silent. But here's what you really need to see. I connected my laptop to Mrs. Evelyn's outdoor TV. The block party video played in crystal clear horror. Me on the ground, lips blue, gasping. Barbara arms crossed declaring fake. The kid fighting to call 911 while Barbara shouted, "Don't you dare." Timestamp proved 12 full minutes before help. Dr. Patel's colleague who'd been at the party gasped. My God, Barbara, 12 minutes with oxygen at 78%? The paramedic report says cyanosis, severe deprivation. I click next slide, Dr. Patel's statement. According to my doctor, I was roughly 1 hour from complete respiratory failure. I would have died on that concrete while you stood around calling it drama. Barbara's face went from smug red to sheet white. You can't prove we knew. Actually, I can. I pulled out her own board minutes and journal photocopies Mrs. Evelyn had secretly gathered. Your own words, Barbara. 20 years of entries documenting my attention-seeking while accurately noting symptoms. I read one aloud. March 15th, Sophia claims severe chest pain and breathing difficulty. Clearly trying to skip cousin's wedding setup. Obviously dramatic. That was the day I had walking pneumonia, I said quietly. Diagnosed 3 days later when a teacher finally forced the issue. Neighbors were crying. Mr. Patel stared at Barbara with open disgust. Even her sister-in-law shrank in her chair. Every person here, I continued, voice stronger, has witnessed at least one incident where my real medical distress was dismissed as rule dodging. Some of you questioned it quietly. Most stayed silent. But everyone enabled it. What do you want? Barbara whispered, voice cracking for the first time anyone could remember. Acknowledgement. Accountability. I want it documented that I nearly died because of systematic neglect under your rules. I want assurance this pattern ends, not just for me, but for every resident. I pulled out the statement Beth helped draft. As a mandated reporter, this details the medical neglect. I haven't filed it yet. That would ruin me, Barbara hissed. My reputation, my position. The same way you ruined my health, my trust in my own body, my standing in the only home I have left. The silence was deafening. Board members shifted. Dr. Patel's colleague cleared his throat. The weight of 20 years of willful blindness pressed down. I won't file, I said finally, watching Barbara's shoulders sag in relief. But only if conditions are met. I laid out the typed agreement. First, you will write a formal letter acknowledging the pattern of dismissing medical concerns. Second, the board will cover all medical expenses insurance doesn't, including lifelong blood thinners and specialist care. Third, mandatory board-wide training on recognizing medical emergencies, with an independent oversight committee headed by Mrs. Evelyn and Beth. That's blackmail, Barbara's sister-in-law spat. No, Beth cut in coldly. That's accountability, something missing in this HOA for 2 decades. Fourth, I continued, you will never again dismiss any resident's health complaint as drama or rule dodging. If anyone, child, senior, new homeowner, says they're in pain. You take it seriously or face immediate recall election. I met every eye. And finally, we establish a community medical emergency fund managed by Mrs. Evelyn and Beth, so no one ever has to beg to be believed when they're sick. Barbara started to stand. Sit down, Mrs. Evelyn commanded, voice like steel. You nearly let my neighbor die in front of 30 witnesses while you worried about dessert tables. You'll sign or I'll personally insure every real estate agent, every bank, every future buyer in this county knows exactly what kind of president you are. Dr. Patel's colleague spoke up. Barbara, I was there. I saw. She's being more than generous. One by one, neighbors voiced support. Mr. Patel offered to seed the fund. Others volunteered oversight. Even some of Barbara's loyalists looked ashamed. Barbara signed with shaking hands. Her sister-in-law witnessed, unable to meet anyone's gaze. The backyard emptied slowly, some hugging me, others too humiliated to speak. As Barbara headed for the gate, she turned one last time. Stop pretending this is some victory, she sneered, old mask slipping back on. You've always needed to be the victim. I walked over, smiled, really smiled for the first time in months. I'm not pretending anything, Barbara. I never was. That's the difference between us. Everything I said was true. Everything I felt was real. And now, finally, everyone knows it. Her face crumbled. For the first time in 20 years, Barbara Wilkins had no comeback. She left without another word. 2 weeks later, I stood in my bungalow for the last time, packing the final boxes. The house felt lighter, smaller, less like a prison. Barbara had quietly resigned from the board for personal reasons. Her sister-in-law had moved to another state. The new interim president, Mr. Patel, had already repealed 3 of the most ridiculous covenants. As I carried the last box of the car, I heard again, stop pretending. But this time, it was my dad's voice from the porch. He looked older, sadder, clearer. Stop pretending any of this was okay. I know I failed you. I let Barbara's voice be louder than yours. I want to try to be better, if you'll let me. I set the box down. Without Barbara's shadow, he seemed ready to find his own voice. Therapy first, I said. Individual and family. Then we'll see. He nodded, no argument. As I drove away from Willow Creek for good, my phone buzzed. Text from Beth. Cousin Sarah just called. Her daughter's stomach pains were dismissed by the pediatrician. She's getting a second opinion tomorrow. Said watching what happened to you opened her eyes. Another from Mr. Patel. Medical fund already at $5,000. You changed this neighborhood, Sophia. I pulled over, tears blurring the road. Not from pain this time, but from validation, justice, hope. Mrs. Evelyn had been right. The best revenge wasn't leaving. It was making sure they never forgot why I had to. More than that, it was making sure no one else in Willow Creek would ever suffer in silence again. I merged onto the highway toward a new job interview in a city where nobody knew my HOA history. My phone rang, Mrs. Evelyn. How are you feeling, sweetheart? Real. I answered, surprising myself. For the first time in my life, I feel completely, undeniably real. She laughed softly. Your mother would be so proud. You didn't just survive them, Sophia. You broke the cycle. As I drove toward my new life, I left the past in the rearview. Barbara's voice, once so loud in my head, was finally reduced to what it always should have been. Background noise, growing fainter with every mile. I wasn't pretending anymore. I never had been. And that, neighbors, is how one woman took down an entire HOA empire with nothing but the truth and a little help from the one neighbor who always believed her. If this story hit you in the chest, drop a comment. Have you ever fought an HOA Karen? Have you ever been called dramatic when you were really fighting for your life? Your stories matter. Subscribe for more HOA nightmares turned justice. Hit that like button if Barbara's face crumbling gave you life. And I'll see you in the next neighborhood drama. Stay real out there.